Scotland. Anyway, it gives me great pleasure to introduce episode 120 of the Sussex by the Sea podcast. And well, I'm very pleased to have, and they're going to be very interested in what Richard's got to say. Richard.irving from the Football Supporters Association. His title, that's a very fancy title, was the Network Manager of Community-Owned Clubs. Before we get started, Richard, how the devil are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much indeed, Chris.
Excellent. So, for people that don't know what the Football Supporters Association is and kind of what its kind of remit is, please, can you just sort of fill us in a little bit for those that don't know?
Certainly can. Yeah. So the F.S.A. came out of the merger of the Football Supporters Federation and Supporters Direct back in 2019. The FSF was previously called the F.S.A. We go back into the mists of time and the 50 odd years of supporter involvement and supporter organisations in this country. But those two organisations, the FSF and Supporters Direct, had very different remits. The FSF was to look at fan experiences, the matchday experience, ticketing, all of those sorts of things. Supporters Direct was very much about governance and was set up to look at developing supporters' trust and supporter ownership. So after the merger, the organisation came together. The FSF side, if you like, still works on exactly those things, but we are front and centre of everything to do with football governance. And probably the time when people would have seen us the most is around the Crouch report, the fan-led review, and now the installation of an independent regulator. So you will see our chair, our vice chair and our CEO quite often being interviewed on TV about very much things around the governance of football and regulation and the like. So yeah, still very much doing the same things. My role, as you say, is to look after the community-owned clubs, of which we have we're into the late 30s now, 36, 37, something like that, around the country. 2 in the EFL, the remainder in non-league. And yeah, so that's about developing new clubs as well into the network, but also looking after those clubs that we have existingly.
Yeah, with that, Richard, when you say look after them, what do you mean by that?
So the support that we provide is basically everything that a club could need, and that is so we provide the model rules for those community-owned clubs, and those are registered by Financial Conduct Authority, the F.S.A, and as a result, we oversee the adherence to those rules. So that's everything from numbers of board members to elections and to all of those sorts of things, to how they deal with assets. And then we have external consultants that we can put them in touch with if they've got legal problems, if they've got fundraising issues, and sort of property development issues, so around development of ground and those sorts of things. So we are the sort of we are the de facto regulator, if you like, to make sure that they're adhering to those model rules and doing all the things that they should do, getting their accounts into the F.S.A on an annual basis, conducting proper elections, having AGMs, all of those sorts of things, but also the support organisation as well to make sure that they are able and functioning as well as they possibly can.
Okay, and so if any clubs aren't doing that, you're able to what?
Yeah, we step in and help. I mean, I regularly turn up at clubs' AGMs. I travel around the country. There's myself and Andy Walsh, who some of your listeners will probably have heard of, as he was one of the founding members of FC United in Manchester. He joined the F.S.A a number of years ago now. He and I work on community ownership, and so yeah, we travel around visiting clubs, making sure everybody's okay and trying to solve problems. And it's about trying to establish the network, develop the network, so that it's not only us doing that, but our member clubs are helping other clubs, because it's we have a sort of quarterly network meeting, and at that everybody sort of shares problems. We have a sort of couple of hours together where we talk through the activities in the network and those sorts of things, but also share problems, because it's pretty likely that if one of those clubs has come across a difficulty, one of the other clubs will have seen something very, very similar before, and it's a really, really sort of useful networking tool. So my role is to really bring all of those people together, and when they come to me, know that somebody else might have encountered that difficulty before.
Yeah, okay. In terms of how would a club become fan owned? I mean, is it kind of like the chicken or the egg sort of situation in terms of does a fan group need to approach you to kind of say, well, look, we're interested in maybe getting involved with our club in terms of making it more representative, or
Yep.
whatever way they want to word it, or is it clubs have approached yourselves and said?
It's a real variety of different ways that things have come about, and it's evolving. When we first started out with the very first fan-owned club, and I think you mentioned earlier that you'd spoken to guys at Enfield Town, so well over 20 years ago now that they were established. They were coming out of crisis, basically, sale of the ground. Then we had people like AFC Wimbledon, obviously the F.A. stitch up, etc. FC United, who came about as a protest against the Glazer ownership of the club. So it was that was the sort of very, very early stages. A lot of clubs going into administration, Exeter City, then Chesterfield, who then went back into private ownership or ownership by their community trust at a latter stage. So yeah, different evolving ways that the community-owned clubs were coming about. What we're finding now is, and this is happening more and more, and we've just registered one today, is that clubs are coming to us because they see it as a strategic decision to do so, and that it's the community ownership, and that's what we call it, as opposed to fan ownership and supporter ownership, and that's what we tend to use more often, because that is what we believe it to be, and it's about developing the football club's role within their community. So a group of fans coming together. So yes, it is fan ownership, supporter ownership, but as part of their community to develop the club under this model. So we're seeing a really nice sea change. Clubs aren't. We are dealing with Nuneaton at the moment. We've been talking to Rochdale. Those situations have moved on. We're talking to Torquay United, for example. In the recent past, we've been talking with Southend United. So there are still people coming to us in crisis situations, but it's quite refreshing for people to come and me to go to meetings and people say, this is something that we want to do because we think this will work for us.
Yeah, and not we're winding up in 2 weeks, save us.
Well, exactly. We've had some nice little success stories. You probably know that East Thurrock United went into administration in September. We've now set up a community-owned club there called East Thurrock Community. They're going to start back down in step 7 or 8 in the Essex leagues in August, but they've already got 150 members and a bunch of people that used to volunteer at the club previously involved in the club. So it's really amazing when you get to a meeting such as that one that I went to in December, and you've got sort of 80 or 90 people turn up wanting to hear what you've got to say and instantly come up with their membership fee and set the club off on its way. So it's it's quite a rewarding experience. So when you see clubs go to the wall, it's obviously pretty depressing. But when you see something like that, it's totally different.
Phoenix from the ashes, as it were.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, going on to that kind of the models of fan ownership. Now, I'm a diehard Hastings fan who's still upset that your Lewis pinched. They actually didn't pinch. You took 6 points from us this season.
Played very well at Pilot Field, I thought, actually. Surprisingly well for us, because we've not been very good, but there we are.
We did present some gifts, but maybe we talk about it another time. There was a few gifts given, but like we've had our troubles before. Previous ownership, there was lots of, should we say, a few angry meetings where people said the word fan ownership without really knowing what that really entails. It's as a concept, everyone thinks, oh yeah, fan ownership. But say, for instance, like obviously there's Lewis, there's Enfield. Could you give us a couple of examples of kind of clubs that are around that kind of level and the kind of setup of their kind of fan ownership, if it were?
Yeah. Okay. So there's two different ways that you can do it, if you like. They are basically, they're incredibly similar. Just going back though to what you say about fan ownership, and there's a lot of sort of misnomers around it. What we call fan ownership is an entity owned by fans that secures 50% plus one vote, basically. So think of the German model and the way that the Verein holds the football club in Germany. This is exactly the same thing. The majority of our clubs are 100% fan owned. So that is either via a supporters trust or which is the model rules that we have in place. But we also have model rules for a straight club as well. So it's there's slight subtle differences around it. The supporters trust would wholly own the limited company that operates the football club. Some of the misnomers around it, I think, come from historic misunderstanding of what this is about. To the point, the real extreme point where quite a lot of clubs have directors that say, "Well, we're fans, so therefore we're fan owned." Rochdale is a good example. Recently, there's 600 different fans that actually hold the shares in the football club, but they don't. There's not there's still a controlling interest by another director. So again, there is a degree of fan ownership, but not what we would consider to be fan ownership in those instances. And the real crux of the matter is democracy. It is one member, one vote. So any organisation that purports to be fan owned that doesn't operate in that way simply is not. Again, this is our model that we're talking about. So our definition of fan ownership, and as we say, others may have a different view of it. As far as good examples are concerned, I mean, we've got quite a number in the National League North, National League South. Down south, we've got Tunbridge Angels, for example, playing in National League South. They have operated the model now for quite some considerable time, reasonably successful, sort of floating around the playoff levels. Others at step 4, so our level, sort of people like Hendon as well, Lewis, obviously, as you've mentioned, and some of the more sort of higher profile ones in the north of England, like Scarborough Athletic, Darlington, Chester, and the like as well, all operating to this model. That's not to say that everybody is adhering to it absolutely bang on, and we do have to take some of the ways that some of the clubs operate with a pinch of salt. Not everybody is perfect. I will put my own club in that, and I'm sure you know about the donations that have been made to the club over the last 10 or 12 years. But ultimately, and you mentioned it at the top of the programme, and that was our real remit is to try and make football clubs sustainable. And we believe this is the most sustainable model. It gets us away from the boom and bust that you guys have seen, that so many other clubs have seen at all levels of football, where a private owner comes in, runs out of money, because nobody makes any money at football, as we know, except a very, very few exceptions at the very, very top of the game. And the boom and bust cycle just continues on from there. So it's about, and this is backed up now, hopefully, by an independent regulator. As far as the sort of 5 tiers of English football is concerned, and we hope further down into it as well. And we hope that alongside the work that we do and a bit more good sense being applied, sustainability is the sort of way forward for everybody.
Okay, yeah. So just on the points you made. So when you say that a football trust would have, say, 50% control or 50 plus 1, and then a private owner, whoever, another person would have the other 49%. I mean,
that's the absolute bare minimum. Yeah,
that's the bare minimum. Okay.
Yeah. So the majority of our clubs are either 100% or a lot larger than 50%. I mean, probably the one club that's got an ownership of around about 55% of the shares is Hereford, but the majority are much more, sort of 75 to 100% owned by the supporters trust or by by the model, as I say, the club model that is 100%.
Okay, and just because this is, I know in the bar after a game, like when I've spoken to people about this, they'll just throw questions at me like, well, yeah, but what we need to get a player in or something. I mean, say at Lewis, what if you can talk about that? That's fine if you can't, but like if there is say like a need for you've got an injury crisis, you've got to get someone in, a playing matter kind of on that thing. How does it? obviously, like we talk democracy, but like sometimes decisions need to be made fairly quickly.
Yeah.
How does that work?
So as far as there are a group of subcommittees that you would have, let's say, let's keep it more general, across our clubs. You wouldn't go as far as so the democracy line is really for the big decisions, moving ground and all of these sorts of things, and obviously elections, electing a board and these sorts of things. What you do as a board once you are elected is you set up a number of subcommittees. There would be people within the club that would operate on the football management side that would make those decisions. They would be given a budget, and if you are working to a sustainable model, which we hope everybody is, everything comes in exactly the same way. There's very few differences. It's only in as much as the democracy element, we believe, avoids the stupid decisions being made, because in the past, and that many owners have their football clubs as sort of vanity projects. As well as I do that if they want to gain promotion, throwing money at it is the best way to do that, or that is the perceived best route to it. The plurality of ownership should temper that, should actually stop that happening, so that you do actually make sure that you run in a sustainable fashion. And that's why we advocate the idea. It does not exclude sponsors, it doesn't exclude donations, but what you don't get in return, which many people that want to own football clubs do want, is control. You do not get that control. So if somebody's a willing benefactor and wants to put money into the football club, then that is fine, and we would guard against it, because if it's too larger sums, because obviously the sustainability would come into it. But if it's regular and the like, and what you need is obviously a number of those to keep everything going in the same way as any other football club. It operates in a very, very similar way, but with that democratic fan involvement piece in the background that makes sure it should stay on track, basically.
Yes, I mean, because I can already hear a few fans in my ears. Well, democracy, but just decisions that mean nothing at the end of a season. But what you're saying is, because you're regulators, the big decisions. So you're talking about budgetary decisions, big, as you say, ground moves. I mean, is there any other examples of the kind of big decisions that a football club?
I mean, I guess one of the major ones is if somebody comes in, as they have done at various of our clubs, to take it back into private ownership. There's a fairly high bar that you've got to get over, sort of 75% of members voting in a vote to go back into private ownership. Newport County have done it recently. So those are the sorts of things. I mean, some clubs put a lot of things out to their members to vote on, sort of the new kit and those sorts of things, and whether they would be involved in certain tournaments, or whether they all of those sorts of things. You can go down to a slightly more minutiae level, but
is there a minimum, Richard? Is what I'm trying to get at.
There isn't. There's nothing stipulated. No, I mean, there are within the rules. Obviously, if you want to dissolve and go into private ownership, that is catered for. There's an asset lock. So if you want to do something, if you own your ground and want to do something with that, i.e., sell it, that's covered as well. So those are the big ticket items, I guess, within it, and there is that level of protection, basically.
Yeah. Well, I suppose moving on from this, we're going to talk a little bit about football governance. Now, I mentioned before we started recording this that I've heard many a story, and I'm sure you have as well, of clubs going overboard to ridiculous extent. I mean, I know a story from a season or two ago where I heard from a very, very good source, one club, particularly in the ISTHMIAN PREM, that was top. Chairman told them, we cannot be top. We need to get rid of everyone. We've got no money. We cannot go up. And which was like, okay, this was like 2 months into a season. That kind of helter-skelter, like sort of half decent, like actual budgeting. If you haven't got it, you haven't got it. That sort of craziness. I mean, is there anything that the F.S.A. is doing or can do or is already doing to kind of keep a little bit of a temper on some of these clubs, because it can really, we've got. I already know that there's a few clubs even this season that are paying ridiculous money for people, and maybe we don't go too specific, but
I know exactly the club you're thinking of from 2 years ago, because it was quite shocking, sort of. And to be honest, we talk to people that say exactly the same. It's actually too expensive to get promoted, that sort of thing. As far as what we're doing, bringing in the independent regulator at the top levels of the game is a start. Obviously, that is going to lead to a lot more of a level playing field as far as the professional game is concerned. We were disappointed that certainly from our perspective in community ownership at the F.S.A, we were disappointed that it's not coming down below the National League itself, and not even as far as National League North and South, because we believe it needs it, for exactly the reasons that you've set out. The last thing that we need is clubs overspending to the point where they're jeopardising their futures, because ultimately, they're all community assets. Every single one of our clubs is a community asset, and we want to keep all of them going, basically. So we will need some backup. There is only so much we can do. We obviously encourage our non-league community-owned clubs to be as sustainable as they possibly can be, and I think we've got a very good record as far as that is concerned, in that only one of our community clubs has ever gone into administration, and that was Stockport back in the early 2000s. So we are it's not to say that some aren't living a little bit on the precipice, because that's football. That is the way football is, unfortunately. But the message that we're trying to get across is that more financial prudence is required to guarantee that longevity of clubs, because the last thing we want to see is clubs disappearing. Thankfully it seems to have slowed a little bit, but there are still plenty that are teetering on the edge, as I'm sure you know. It's just it's very, very sad, and you can see it. You can go even in our division. You go to some clubs that clearly have not got the support that they require to be in that division. And some of those have been at higher levels. It's quite surprising to see how few people are involved. And this is another thing as far as community ownership is concerned. For it to be a success, and you mentioned earlier on about what do we need to do to go into community ownership? Well, the answer to that is you need willing volunteers, and lots of them. People that not just a bunch of driving people, sort of 4 or 5 people driving things from the start, but people way into the future that will take this on, which is why when I go to an open meeting, if there's particularly for a club, say at our level, in Ishmian Premier, if 20 people turn up, then I'm inclined to say, well, this isn't going to work for you. You need more people. Maybe you are best served as privately owned for the moment, because you need to get more people involved before we can consider this sort of a model, because that's exactly what it's about. It's about having the club in perpetuity in the community ownership model, and keeping it sustainable for the long term, not even the medium term.
I was going to maybe go on to health of the football pyramid in general. What's your thoughts? We're both of us already said that not particularly interested in the Premiership, but it's good that a lot of these clubs are getting pulled up now about with their governance, and that's trickling down to the Championship. What do you feel? Do you feel this is too little, too late? Do you feel that it's kind of shutting the barn door after the horse has bolted type situation? What do you think, Richard?
There's an element of that. I think there's a lot of work to do at the top end of the game. Premier League is kind of, because of the ridiculous amount of money being paid on broadcasting, it ought to be sustainable. If you can't sustain a football club with that amount of money coming in, well, I don't know why you would be in it. The Championship, I think, is, and I often use the term, the Wild West. It's a financial Wild West. It's that trying to get into the Premier League is just the be all and end all, and as a result we've got examples of clubs. I don't know what the figures are, I haven't seen them recently, but when you've got clubs spending 175% of their turnover on wages, that's not sustainable at any level with anybody. I think there is a robustness to the pyramid. Many of the clubs that do go to the wall come back, either as Phoenix clubs or are just reinvented in some way or other, and that I think shows the strength the strength of feeling around the clubs and the amount of people that are happy to get involved at them. And I think that despite what might be done to them by rogue owners and the like, there's still, and this plays into our hands a little bit, there are still lots and lots of people who want to get involved and go and watch their football club. So I think there's definitely that robustness to the pyramid. I think it functions quite well. I think there are worrying trends down towards the lower ends where, you know, payments are being made to players, which I don't think, again, is sustainable when you get down to sort of step 5, step 6, that sort of a level. I think, you know, that starts to concern me. Certainly, that's certainly a bugbear of mine. So yeah, I think it's there's a real resilience, but we can't be complacent. I think there's only another crisis club around the corner, and I'm sure we'll see, and we'll be busy over the summer with a few that have overextended themselves and you know, are wondering whether they can carry on next season.
Thanks for that, Richard. But Richard, I've got you on. I've got to ask you, right? Hornchurch, obviously, they're going up, aren't they? There's no doubt about that. Who's making the playoffs and who's winning it?
Who's making the playoffs? So I'm amazed that Billericay have fallen away, because they are the best. I think they're the best side I'd seen this season.
Good side.
Yeah. And how they've managed to sort of drop away, I don't know. I would love to see Enfield Town go up. I'd be very concerned, as everybody would be, for any of our clubs coming out of our division, because I think National League South is a very competitive division and also is very expensive.
Yeah.
So, you know, Enfield would need to see a few more people coming through the door, that sort of thing, a bit more sponsorship and all of those sorts of things as well. But I would really love them to get promoted, and we're not going to make it. So what do you think of your chances?
Well, after that defeat against Horsham, who is I felt it was done a few weeks ago, but I'm not allowed to say that too loudly around my own fans, because they
they'll hang draw and quarter you, won't they?
Yeah, they beat me with sticks. I'd say I'd like to see Enfield go up. Some good guys there at Enfield. I know we obviously know quite a few of them there, and
we're playing Horsham tonight, so we won at their place again quite easily the other week, which surprised everybody. But we fully expect them to do a job on us this evening and probably end our hopes, I would think. But I think they've got a decent chance. I don't know what they were like when you played them, but I would have thought they've got a decent chance of getting promotion as well.
I hope so. But are you going tonight, by the way?
I am indeed.
Enjoy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, listen, Richard, absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
No problem. And if ever anybody wants to talk about community ownership, if there's anybody at Hastings United or any other club in Sussex that ever wants to talk about it, we're a phone call or an email away, and we're happy to come and talk about what we do at relatively short notice. If there's enough people interested, we'll come along and do that. So
Yeah, no, I'll definitely raise it. I'll raise it with fan base, and you know, we could try and organise something. Details anyway, but
of course.
No, thank you, Richard. Take care.
No problem.
See you at the game, sir. Take care,
Indeed.
Richard. Thanks for your time.
Look forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, mate.